Hey, how you doing out there? It's David Duford at buylifeinsuranceforburial.com, where I help people like you get affordable life insurance for final expense and burial reasons. And today on the presentation, we are specifically talking about the official guide to life insurance for burial costs. So most likely you're here today because you're interested potentially in purchasing some kind of life insurance to cover your burial costs, or maybe you're just wondering how life insurance would cover for burial costs, and you're just looking for information, perhaps doing due diligence to figure out if something like a life insurance plan for burial costs would make sense for you or for somebody you love. If that's the case, if you fit that profile, then make sure you stick around because we're going to do a very detailed overview of answering this exact question. So let's get started. So let's start with an overview of what we're going to talk about today. First, I'm going to introduce you to myself as well as to my company if you haven't formally met myself yet. And then I'm going to answer the question you probably have: why get life insurance to cover burial costs? Give you some good reasons why that may be a good idea. We're going to break down the average costs for burial-related expenses such as funerals, cremations, and then also talk about inflationary concerns as it affects burial and funeral expenses. And then I'm going to tell you what my experience has been, helping over 3,000 families since 2011 with burial insurance and burial expenses, and how the whole market is and really what you should be concerned with based off of experience. And then also we'll talk about life insurance plans for burial costs. Specifically, there's different kinds of plans known as permanent, temporary, or pre-need, and then in what circumstances one would be a better choice than another. Then we're going to talk about the steps to get qualified for a plan if you deem it necessary or beneficial to get one. And then talk about things such as whether or not you should or shouldn't get an exam, whether or not you should deal with an agent or go direct to the company, and if you do deal with an agent, whether or not you should deal with what's known as a captive agent or an independent agent. And then I'll give you my final thoughts and talk about what the next steps would be if you find what I have to offer to be of use to you. So my name is David Duford. I am the owner of buylifeinsuranceforburial.com. I've been a licensed life insurance agent since 2011 and have helped over 3,000 families since I first started with life insurance needs of all sorts. I'm also an author. A book that you would be most interested in, I think would be the most relevant, would be the one you see in the left-hand corner here. It's called The Official Guide to Buying Final Expense Life Insurance, and the purpose of the book is just a quick read to help consumers better select which life insurance option would best suit them. I'm also a life insurance agency owner. I actually train and mentor agents from coast to coast across the country to help people in their own community, just like you, with their final expense and burial insurance needs. And last but not least, I'm married and my fourth child is on the way. So as I film this video, cross your fingers and wish us luck. So now we're going to talk about what reasons someone would have to purchase life insurance to cover burial insurance costs. Maybe you're on this particular presentation because you're just trying to figure out if such a product is right for you. So the goal with this particular section is to give you some reasons why to hopefully resonate with you, that would give you and arouse interest in some kind of particular protection. So let's talk about the most prominent reasons. So the most prominent reasons, in my experience, that somebody would purchase or need to have some kind of burial insurance plan or life insurance to cover burial costs would be if they have little to no savings. So there's a couple of different circumstances this could apply to. The first is you would be, if you or a loved one is on a fixed income, receiving one check a month, disabled or retired, and you're worried that with the meager income that you make, that you would not have time enough to save up enough money to pay for final expenses. And that cost may be shouldered upon some other person, a loved one, a family member, and you don't want that to happen to yourself if you're the family member, or to yourself if you're this person we're describing. So a burial insurance plan or a life insurance plan to cover burial costs would be perfect in this circumstance. So for a small premium on a monthly basis, the concept is at any point that you were to pass away, assuming you could qualify, you would have a death benefit paid to the beneficiary of your choice to cover whatever burial costs that are experienced. So what the purpose of this is designed to give peace of mind. It's designed to reduce the worry and concern that if you have less years than you think you do, that you still have the money in the form of a life insurance policy to take care of these burial insurance costs. The second situation is you may be the child of a parent or you may be the person who is actively involved in trying to help out and insure your loved ones for this particular circumstance, and you're concerned if your said parent were to pass away that you would shoulder that burden, or perhaps your brothers or sisters would. So a lot of people I deal with, they have parents that they're trying to insure, and we're able to help them out tremendously because we're able to shop around, find the best price and coverage, and alleviate that expensive burden that they may not be able to shoulder on their own. One of the reasons why it's important is when there's no insurance and no money, and say there's 3 or 4 kids, there's usually arguments and disagreements as to who should pay for what, and many times money problems leave irreconcilable differences. Loved ones never pay back their portion that they promised they would have, and it causes this type of strife that is uncomfortable. So whether you're a senior citizen in this position or whether you're the child of a senior citizen, this is a great reason to own life insurance to cover burial costs so that you don't even have to consider something like that happening. Also, another reason why people buy these plans is because they've lived through a loved one's funeral. I like to teach my agents who come on board with me and want to sell life insurance that life insurance is primarily an event-driven purchase decision. So people buy, for example, burial insurance because it's something that is stimulated and shocked into reality based off of a death of a close loved one. So, for example, many times when I deal with people, I speak to widows, and they tell how their husbands passed away and that they didn't have coverage, and they had to come up with the money that they did not have to properly bury their spouses. And having lived through that experience and how traumatic it was just to lose a loved one, not to mention that to try to find the money to cover it, they don't want that same experience replicated to the children because many times the child was a part of that process, and they just don't want it to happen again. So on the flip side, some people buy a burial insurance plan because they see a relative who was well prepared, who thought out in advance, making sure that there was a cash payment readily available to pay the funeral home, and how much of a relief it gave the family members, in addition to removing the worry for price and then allowing the family to do what they should do, which is just grieve for the loss of somebody they loved their entire lives. So that's a great reason. Both of those reasons are great, and it's just that experience of death through the loss of a loved one that really brings a lot of people into the mindset that something like this is valuable and it does help solve problems. And as I mentioned, lived through one's funeral where they had insurance and then they did it. Part of what I mentioned earlier is wanting to remove the payment burden from kids. I think this is huge. I'm a father myself. I own life insurance, and part of that reason, albeit I'm not a person who would buy a burial insurance plan because I'm not in my 60s or 70s like most people I see and talk to. But part of the reason I have life insurance is because I have an obligation to my family to protect them whether I'm alive or dead. And I do so, and I help raise them in an environment by working and helping people and making an income. But I'm not too blind to see that my life is a mere mortality as well. And as easy as I'm sitting here talking to you, explaining to you the benefits of life insurance, I'm the one that could go first before you. And so it's only a responsible man or person would agree that life insurance is a necessity. If you love, really, truly love the people you say, not just say you love, but act to love them. And for the expense it costs to just protect a basic amount is very negligible. And so the same kind of mentality stretches probably to you. If you're a parent of a kid and you're in your elderly years and you're worried that your death may bring about financial strife to your children, then a burial insurance plan to cover burial costs is a smart idea. Again, you do this business long enough, you really see families who are torn apart by money problems. That really does affect a lot of people. You hear about rich people and how they have all this money and they're divided over how the estate is separated. Well, you don't have to be rich to have money disputes. Take, for example, I had a client in her 80s. She just bought a policy from me, and her main reason was instead of trying to partition the land that she owned in Georgia, she wanted to give a cash benefit to one of the kids that didn't live on the land and wasn't necessarily interested in having the land. So she managed her own little estate in such a way to where her son was going to get the land, her grandson was going to get a cash death benefit, and that would evenly separate the two estates and keep their relationship intact. Whereas if she didn't do this, then in her will, it says, it would have said that this land would be split, or even if it didn't say that, they would argue who gets what. And that kind of strife can cause all sorts of problems. So I thought this was an exemplary example of why people buy burial insurance for burial costs, so to get around some of these problems that could manifest themselves between loved ones. And a lot of people buy plans because they want to plan well in advance of final wishes. A lot of people are worried that what they want won't get done, and a final expense plan can accommodate, depending on the type of plan, as we'll discuss later, to make sure what you want actually gets enacted the way that you wish it to be. Not all plans are the same. Some are more designed around a pre-planning aspect. Others are more designed just to give you a lot of coverage for a little price. We'll talk about the difference between all of those momentarily. But the point is there's a lot of good reasons to buy burial insurance, and really it all comes around to appreciating peace of mind. You want peace of mind. Life insurance solves problems. It's an act of love. And we worry, we can't help but to worry what would happen if we're gone. And if we take that a little bit further, what would happen to other people when we're gone? And how would their financials be impacted? And so life insurance is beautiful because even with something like burial costs, it does a good job handling that cost so loved ones don't have to, and you can retain relationships without causing irreconcilable strife in some circumstances. So let's talk about a breakdown of burial insurance costs. So the first step to determining how much life insurance you need to figure out what the total cost would be for a life insurance policy to cover burial costs. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take you over to my screen, and I'm going to show you a breakdown of the National Funeral Directors Association's breakdown of the averaging price for funerals and cremations. And inflations, I'm going to talk about that off screen. They took the inflation information down, but I'm going to kind of describe to you what inflationary impacts there have been, and then I'm going to give you my own experience as to what really has happened. So let's go ahead and then we'll come back, give you some takeaways from that. So let's go ahead and transfer your screen over, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So what you're looking here on the screen is a breakdown of costs associated with funerals and cremations. Now specifically here, this is just some information about how this data was collected and then what information is used to arrive at costs. It used to be this website had the difference between the last 10 years, but if we look at year 2017 cost, and this is for a funeral and a burial, your average cost with a vault is $8,755. That's up about $255, roughly, really roughly, relative to 2014. And if you look through here, I'm scrolling up to show you, you can see an itemized breakdown, the service fees, removals, embalming, hearse, service van, memorial package, normal stuff in the average funeral. Total costs expect about just shy of $9,000. Now here we're looking at cremation costs. Again, you see the itemized breakdowns. You can read this at your own time, but very similar to what you read above, minus a few differences. And for a cremation, they're averaging a $6,260 price tag for a cremation that is the full works. So let's talk really quickly, now that you've seen some basic prices as of year 2017, let's talk about some inflationary concerns. There was a chart back on that website that compared 2014 to 2004 pricing. It was interesting because the price percentage increase was about about close to 25%. So that means whatever the price was in 2004, 10 years later it was 25% higher. And then there was a chart comparing 2004 numbers to 1994 numbers, and that had gone up another 25%. So it escalated 25% twice over a 20-year period, which one of the many concerns people have is what happens if I live 20, 30, 40 years from now, and what costs $10,000 or what's averaging $9,000 costs $18,000. And so inflation is definitely something to be very concerned with. We don't want to get any kind of plan that doesn't allow to cover the future expectation of what the price is going to be. So I want to tell you my experience here as an insurance agent, because it kind of depends. Inflation is a concern, but what I've been in this business since 2011, very long time. I've seen different economic environments. And I can tell you, this particular chart that the National Funeral Directors Association put up, I believe, is not necessarily accurate because there are differences in different markets. When I say markets, in different cities, let's say, you're going to have a collection of different funeral homes. And some will be the high-end, very expensive funeral homes. Some will be the middle-of-the-road, family-owned funeral homes that don't charge a lot but don't charge little. And then you'll actually, and this is pretty new, because of all this price inflation, there are discount funeral homes that are good quality. It's just their approach to doing business is not to overcharge. And so they go out and they promote themselves as, hey, if you don't want to spend an enormous amount of money, come to us. We'll do it for half the cost at the same quality. And so what's happened is I see this all over the place in different cities and different environments. And that average is just a representation of everything. I have seen funerals done for $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. Where I live in the Southeast, these are the discounter funeral homes, and these are in moderately sized cities. I've seen high-end funerals where we're talking $12,000 plus. Very nice funeral. I've seen funerals in Hawaii that cost $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 because there's just not a lot of land space to bury people. So it just really depends. There's a regionality to it. But what I haven't really seen a ton of is this inflationary fear tactic that a lot of these organizations use. What I think to expect over the next 10, 20, 30 years is that pricing will go up. It certainly will for everything. But I don't see it getting to the point, unless some economic turmoil happens that's well out of everybody's control. I don't see funerals going from $7,000 or a $9,000 average to an $18,000 average in 10 years or even 20 years. There's going to be more market competition in the funeral business. I think you'll see more of that because a lot of people I talk to, the one big reason in this business, biggest trend is there's less people being buried and more people being cremated. And one factor to it is that it's just people can't justify spending as much as they do in a burial to take care of them. Whereas a cremation usually runs a lot less expensive. And I'll mention this too. The costs there for the cremation, I think, are very, very expensive. I have seen, and this is the same argument I made earlier, in most towns you're going to see cremations done by high-end dealers or high-end funeral homes, middle-of-the-road cremations, maybe about $3,000 total. And then you'll see the discounters, which are what's called direct cremations. They'll do it for $1,000, not including the urn. So I've seen a lot of places $1,500 to $2,000. There may not be a service with that. Sometimes people just want a service at the Rotary Club. My grandfather was cremated. We had a service at the Rotary Club. They paid for it. It was part of, a way to give back to the family. Maybe at a church. So there's ways to save money on that $6,000 price tag. To me, that's very inflated. I don't believe it based on my experience. I would suggest $3,000 to $5,000 for cremation is plenty. And it will be representative of what I believe, not just what cremation prices are today, but what they will be in 10 to 20 years. So if you were looking, bottom line, for a funeral home or a funeral plan, I would start looking at about $10,000 to $15,000. That is a good starting point. Remember, you can always buy more coverage later. You can certainly get more than that if you want, but $10,000 to $15,000 is the litmus test or the starting point. You can get less if you have to, but $10,000 to $15,000 is good. Whereas with a cremation, $5,000 is a good number to just safely cover everything. Maybe less if all you want is a direct cremation. So now that we've talked about what to anticipate as far as burial cost or cremation cost goes, what you have to understand is we want to make sure and define what the need is first. And once we know what the economic need is, at that point we can proceed to begin to select and choose the right kind of life insurance plans to cover those burial insurance costs or burial costs the most effectively. So here's the thing. Life insurance is just not all the same. It's like there's different cars out there. There's different vehicles and sizes and speeds to do all sorts of certain things. Same thing in life insurance. So it's really important you understand your options and understand the pros and cons. That's what we're going to do today. We're first going to talk about permanent coverage, then temporary coverage, and then pre-need coverage. So let's jump in and take a more in-depth look at all of those. Okay, so permanent coverage is just as it describes. It's permanent coverage. as long as the premium's paid as described in the policy, you have permanent coverage. So when we say permanent, what we really mean, and many times, is whole life insurance, okay? And so some benefits of permanent insurance, or if you want to call it whole life insurance, are as follows. So first of all, the price never goes up. So when you're quoted a premium for permanent life insurance, that rate is locked in for as long as you pay that premium and keep it up. So there's never the worry of a future price increase. As we'll find with other insurance shortly, there are insurance that actually raise rates on you tremendously as you get older, right when you don't need it to happen. Also with whole life insurance or permanent life insurance, generally speaking, the coverage never reduces in size. So it stays the same amount the entirety that you keep the plan. And the good thing too is that, again, by definition of being permanent, you cannot be canceled due to age or health. As you continue to make the premiums, as you continue to keep up with the policy, it will stay in force, and you can never be canceled due to age or health. So as long as you keep that up, you've got coverage. And in most circumstances, you're approved from the first day for the full coverage, depending on underwriting. So some plans make you wait 2 years. You want to try to avoid that if you can. But there's a lot of plans, especially if you work with a broker. We'll talk about that later. They can shop around to try to find the best price because they've got the best underwriting flexibility to deal with different kinds of health issues. And with these plans, no exam is required. It's optional with some companies, and many times it's just not even necessary. They won't even let you if you wanted to take them. And a lot of people buy permanent life insurance because they want true peace of mind. They just want to know, Dave, I just want to pay something I can afford and not ever worry about it again. That's very appealing, especially for a lot of people who bought insurance, thought it was going to be there when they need it, just find out that it cancels because the insurance agent didn't disclose that particular factoid. So bottom line, permanent coverage is about peace of mind. Pay it and just keep it and know everything's good. Now let's talk about temporary coverage. So temporary coverage only lasts for a predefined period of time and then ultimately either goes up way in price, in many cases it cancels. So you are probably more familiar with the term insurance or term life insurance. That's what we call temporary life insurance. Term is short for terminating, okay? That's a good way to remember what term does. It terminates. And if you look at industry statistics, maybe it's 97, 98, maybe 99%, somewhere in there. But the vast majority of term life insurance plans are outlived. Frankly, as I work with and partner with insurance companies, I can tell you term insurance is certainly designed to pay a death benefit if they die within a period of time. But more importantly, these companies know that the people they take on, their bet is that, and hope is that they outlive the coverage so that all that money they pay for the protection never is spent on a death claim. So understand these insurance companies understand that, and they're hopefully banking on you not dying anytime within the policy's existence. And here's the thing. All insurance decisions is based upon what your economic needs are, but also matching it with the problem itself. The very nature of burial and death is permanent, okay? And it will never go away. It will happen to us all. When you get a temporary solution for a permanent product or permanent problem, you tell me, does that actually solve the problem? If I get something that only solves it for a little bit but doesn't solve it forever, you may outlive that term insurance, but that problem still remains. So why get something that doesn't really truly solve the problem? This is why I ask you, imagine not having the coverage when you most need it. And so temporary insurance is what does that. It provides good coverage, but only for a set period of time. Beyond that, if you live beyond it, most do, you're out of luck. And that's the thing. Do you know when your final breath will be? Do you know when you're going to die? Because it's going to happen. So why take a chance on a plan that you may outlive, right? Something to think about. And one of the pros with term insurance or temporary insurance, it's usually less expensive initially, but the cost is more in the long term. And again, when we think of less expensive, we think, oh, I'm going to pay less money. But cost not just only means price, what you'll pay, but also means the effect it'll have. And I can tell you, you're going to experience a huge effect cost-wise if you have no coverage. And sure, you would have saved all those pennies, but it's like stepping over a $20 bill to pick up a penny. You know, you're stepping over something that is much more advantageous, but but you're opting for something that's cheaper, but you're not seeing the full picture. So what you want to do is avoid cost and solve a permanent problem with a permanent solution. Now let's talk about pre-need life insurance for burial costs. So pre-need life insurance is a unique product sold through the funeral home. Funeral directors sell it, and the concept is it's a permanent plan, and you pay on it for anywhere between a one-time lump sum payment to pay the whole thing off up to a 10-year payment plan. It's an actual insurance product. It's not set up through the funeral home. But what happens is it insures you if you die prematurely before paying the plan off. So it acts as insurance, and it also acts as a way to ensure that your funeral expenses are taken care of. One of the biggest advantages of a pre-need life insurance plan is they lock in the items that you select at the funeral home. So it removes this fear of inflation, and it gives you the control of what you want in your funeral and what's important to you and what's not. It's portable. So these pre-need plans, you can go from one funeral home to the next. Let's say you live up in New York State, you live down in South Florida during the winter, and you die down there. Well, as long as that particular funeral home accepts that particular plan, you're fine, which most of them thankfully do. And again, biggest advantage here with this particular plan is it allows you to pre-plan well and ahead of time, item by item, and lock in that price and give you the flexibility of an insurance plan, but also give you the planning aspects that just a lot of people appreciate. I think the biggest drawback to this plan is the pricing element. You see, the thing is, you know, for any sort of advantages you get, you're going to pay more for it. And the fact that you're removing price inflation and tying it into a plan means you're going to pay for that benefit somehow through an insurance plan. So if you look at many of the plans that are 5, 7, and 10 years in length, these pre-need plans, and you add up the amount of money you pay into the premiums compared to what you're paying for, you'll commonly pay $18,000 for a $9,000 or $10,000 burial. I see this all the time. I see it commonly when people have pre-need plans. The cumulative premiums paid in well exceed the actual value. And the reason they do that is to make sure that inflation's through the roof, they've collected a lot of money ahead of time. So, in my opinion, I don't like pre-need plans because they end up being 2-3 times as expensive. Plus, some people want a life insurance plan for burial costs, not just for that, but also to pay for income replacement, maybe pay down mortgage or other debts, or just pass money along to loved ones. With pre-need plans, it's a defined benefit that the funeral home is the beneficiary to. Above and beyond that, your family gets nothing. So I'm of the persuasion it's a much better deal to get some kind of permanent life insurance that will give you more flexibility and control. So what is best? So kind of peeked into this a little bit just now, but here's my experience with each particular product. Temporary coverage is if you just don't care. If you care enough, but not that much, temporary coverage is better than nothing, but it doesn't solve as long as you understand it's not solving the problem, then you get it. But again, it just temporary solves a problem, but it may not in the long run, which most of these companies are betting you won't be able to get to. And yeah, you may say, well, I'll just buy another term insurance later. Well, what happens if your health changes? What happens when you're older and it's really expensive? Will you even be able to afford it? It ends up costing a lot more in the long run, despite saving a few dollars. If you like peace of mind and will never want to risk outliving losing your coverage, have a certain budget to keep, then I would seriously consider permanent life insurance. That's what I do. This is what I focus in. I help people with term insurance if they absolutely want it. But permanent life insurance is the solution for burial costs because it uniquely matches every aspect of death that you want. It is a permanent problem, and life insurance that's permanent is a permanent solution without all the potential price increase risks or cancellation due to outliving it. Now, if you really like pre-planning, if you really like the idea of going down to the funeral home and you understand that, yeah, you're going to pay a premium, much higher premium for that benefit plan, then hey, go do a pre-need plan. It may be right for you more so than the other plans. Maybe you have no interest at all in replacing income, covering debts, and you just want a pre-designated plan for a funeral plan. Go to the funeral home, they'll do it for you. So let's talk about steps to getting qualified for permanent or temporary life insurance. So understand that I'm at this juncture, I'm only covering temporary and permanent insurance options and the things to take under consideration. So what I mean by that is there's some different elements with different life insurance companies that you would potentially consider that they'll require certain things from you in order to potentially qualify for a plan. One of the most common questions I get from potential applicants for life insurance to cover burial costs is there an exam or is there no exam? Usually it's an optional exam, especially if you get permanent coverage. Many times it's not even optional. They just won't let you do it. It's all done. You have to sign it, and then they'll pull your medical records, and by that, of course, determine insurability. Sometimes an exam is smart because if you're buying a very large amount of coverage, they may require it, or it may just be a better use of your money if you can pass the examination. When I got my insurance plan, I opted for an examination because I know the ones that, with the amount of coverage I have, compared to the ones that don't offer exams to the ones that do, it was obvious that if my real interest is maximizing my death benefit to my family if I die prematurely, I want to take an exam because that may leave them several $100,000 more in coverage compared to the plans that I was looking at. So that's where exams are useful when you're looking at very large sums. The smaller sums, usually under $100,000, no exam is necessary and won't make a difference in most cases whether or not you do it or not. Now, another question. You're probably partially on this training or this educational video because you don't have an agent you're necessarily working with, or you're not sure if working with an agent is something that's intelligent to do, and how that agent may impact you. Does it make your prices higher? Do you have to pay them a commission? Here's my look at and my take on it. So, full disclosure, I'm an insurance agent. I think working with an agent you can trust is the best thing you need to start with. That's why I do these educational videos, to show you, the listener, that I know what I'm talking about, that I have experience in this particular business. And that's really important this day and age, is seeing someone who can demonstrate knowledge and capability. And the key thing is you want to work with an agent because the only other option is to call these companies direct. They can't shop it for you. They may not understand the options best. And finding an agent you can trust is really, really important. Somebody who's looking out for your best interest, somebody you feel knows what they're talking about. The last question you should ask is, should you work with a captive agent or an independent agent? So just to real quickly tell you, a captive agent works for one company only. An independent agent is a broker, shops around, finds the best price. Bottom line, like I mentioned earlier, it's best to work with an agent who is independent, who shops different companies, because you may have health problems. Your health may not be perfect. If you're looking for a burial plan, or if you're looking for a loved one like your parent for a burial plan, their health may have changed negatively. And some companies rate up issues or health problems that other companies don't. And what better way to do it instead of trying to figure all this stuff out for yourself than just talking to an agent at no cost to go out there and who knows the market to find the company that's going to do the best job for you. That's what I do. I don't charge my clients a fee. What I get paid is tied into the plan policy itself. But as a service to my clients, I just take their information, go to the market, and see who's going to give the best job overall. And many times it's dramatically better than what one would find if they pulled something off the junk mail ads or the TV commercials, which those companies usually overpriced, bad coverage, don't fully cover, or they term out and go up in price. So as we're kind of rounding down this thing, let me tell you how really simple it is to apply for a life insurance plan to cover burial costs. So again, what we're doing here is, if you think a permanent life insurance plan or a temporary insurance plan is something that's sensible to you, this is the process you would follow. You'd pick an agent like me. I'll raise my hand, nominate myself, and someone you trust to help take an application and interview you or your person you're thinking about insuring. And then based on the information they collect, they'll give you a proposal. And if you like it, they'll drop a quote, complete an application. Usually that requires a phone interview or just an email. Everything's done over the phone and through the email now. Nothing is required face-to-face. And usually, sometimes within a several-day period of time, you can get a decision. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, a week or two. Usually not any longer than that. And then you find out that as long as everything went through, you're approved for coverage. Then you get your policy, and it's that simple. There's nothing more complex. The only thing you have to do at that point is just keep up with the premiums, make sure they're paid. Everything is good. So, if you like what you heard today, if you like the idea of getting a life insurance plan to cover burial costs, you see why it's important to have it, you see the need for it, how prices are going up, and what it costs, and you're concerned that peace of mind is the most important thing you could try to achieve, I implore you, either do one of two things. You can go to my website, go to buylifeinsuranceforburial.com, click the contact box at the bottom or the top of the screen, send me a message, let me see if I can help you out. Or you can call me direct at 888-626-0439. You'll speak to me live. I'll be happy to run a 5 to 10 minute period of your time to run a quote, see what you could qualify for, describe the details of how it works, and then you be the judge if it's something that's sensible to you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe already if you haven't. I do lots of videos on all sorts of topics related to buying life insurance for burial costs. And other than that, thank you so much for listening, and you guys have a fantastic day.